Stellar Blade was not what I expected. While it was certainly as flashy as advertised, I thought that with the protagonist wearing such a provocative outfit, that this game would be a total power fantasy, as the sexy lead is already another kind of fantasy. What I wasn't expecting was for Eve to stick out like a sore thumb in this world, with all the NPCs, enemies, and environments being so grotesque and mutated. It kind of ruins the illusion of a dazzling lead when disgusting monsters and hostile environments surround her, though I suppose it helps the game with its unique identity. But this is a curious artistic choice. I've given up on trying to figure out why Eve looks like this from a thematic perspective, and I've ultimately accepted that the game is just trying to have some dumb fun with a hot girl. There's no intention or statement behind it, it's simply, here's a hot girl, go have fun. But then, if the sexiness is meant to be the selling point of the game, why does the rest of the game in terms of design and art style seem like it came straight out of a horror post-apocalyptic game? You might think that in a post-apocalyptic world, wastelands are supposed to look dreary and inhospitable, but games like Borderlands and Fallout have proven that you can make wastelands aesthetically pleasing, while Stellar Blade goes out of its way to be revolting. Specifically with its boss designs. These creatures look like they came out of Kojima and Mikami's twisted fantasies. They drip with an inhuman presence, and are so unwieldy and violent that they're a repulsive sight to behold. Maybe there's some sort of theme about beauty destroying ugliness, but I think that's a more harmful message than what weirdos online are perceiving the game to say about Western media. It's just such an odd tonal clash with Eve's anime aesthetic to have her go up against Silent Hill monsters. But whatever the reason might be, that's nowhere near as strange as when the game abruptly switches into Dead Space for 2 levels. Now, maybe this is because of the game's reverence for Nier Automata, that they felt they had to also swap genres, but Nier only switches genres for a few minutes at a time. Stellar Blade spends about an hour as a survival horror game. Again, I'm trying to figure out how the sexiness appeal works alongside turning into Dead Space. I suppose the Resident Evil titles also have hot women in leading roles, but it never sells that up. I think I speak for most people when I say that the fleshy abominations of the Natiba ruin the mood for the flashy combat. Gun to my head, I'd have to guess that the reason for these levels is so that the game can remind you that you have a ranged weapon. But adding a gun to a game like this, where you have to parry constantly and dodge attacks, is clunky. It worked in Nier because it was auto-aimed and didn't interrupt the flow of combat. But in Stellar Blade, swapping between ranged and melee combat would most likely lead to instant demise, as bosses can lunge at you so quickly that you'd barely have a chance to put a few bullets in them before you get ripped apart. But why horror specifically? These sections take place in dimly lit enclosed spaces, where enemies are often hidden behind corners so they can jump out and scare you when you walk past. Nothing about Stellar Blade indicates that any scary content is going to be in the game, and this is a conscious choice to be scary, so what's the inspiration behind it? It's not like these sections are bad or anything, but don't get me wrong, they couldn't make a spin-off in this style. But it runs into the problem that most games with multiple characters or genres do. You are going to vastly prefer one type of gameplay over another, and you have to slog through the sections you don't like to get back to the game you actually enjoy. I'm gonna get crucified for this, but this is why I really don't like God of War Ragnarok, Devil May Cry 5, and Bayonetta 3. They all have extended sections where the gameplay style abruptly shifts, and it's taking me away from the game I want to play. And with Stellar Blade having such phenomenal and flashy combat, why would you take it away just to turn your game into Dead Space for a few levels? And I do mean literally Dead Space, with Cronenbergian flesh monsters, a tight camera angle, and a destroyed sci-fi environment that could only be more direct if the game had told me to chop off their limbs. Stellar Blade is a lot of things, but not all of them fit in with the tone the game is trying to set. Nier got away with it due to the quirkiness of the adventure, but Stellar Blade plays it straight for the most part, so it's incredibly jarring to have disgusting monsters on top of survival horror sections. Overall, I think the game could tone down its sporadicness and be more of an anime-infused spectacle fighter than a kawaii Dead Space. I'll be back in 2 days. In the meantime, here's a video about how Stellar Blade almost made me like Souls-likes.